So it's been a while since we've talked about the Throne World Minecraft server. Before you watch this video, I'd highly recommend watching our first trilogy of videos on the server. But just to catch you up, let me explain a few things. The Throne World SMP server is a Minecraft faction server where players can join or create their own factions and go to war with each other. The server ran for over 8 years and over the course of its lifespan saw 4 great conflicts. Today, I will be telling you about one of them. The year 2021 was not a good year for most people. You had scuffles outside, people had a pretty bad case of the sniffles, and an old man fell down the stairs. Not too fun. This lack of fun was also extended to the Throne World SMP server. It had been 6 years since the multi-server war, link in the description down below, and a lot had changed. Almost every faction was bankrupt, server attendance was at an all-time low, and thousands of pillagers were making their way westward. So how did this happen? When we had last left off, the Raging Wizards were victorious against the Random Trade Empire in the multi-server war, emerging as one of the server's most powerful factions. A few months later, in mid-2016, a coup was launched against then Prime Minister Skibberdog65 by one of his most powerful faction members, player Maniac Master 445. Often called the Dark Revolution, this rebellion would throw the Raging Wizards Empire into a destructive civil war that, after a little double agent work from player VeerMammal56, would end with Maniac defeated and banished to a small island. After this slight setback, Maniac made plans for revenge. Unbeknownst to the Raging Wizards, Maniac sailed to the continent of Meropia, near the center of the map. There, he defeated the leader of Akamandia, a small mountain-based faction. Alright, bub, who's in charge around here? I guess it's me. Maniac crowned himself the supreme leader of the Federation of Darkness, more commonly known as the Dark Empire. Maniac really tried owning the Dark Empire label. In the first few months of his reign, Maniac ordered the construction of gladiator rings and slave mines across the country. Those who refused to serve the Supreme Leader either found themselves thrown into these prisons or had their heads mounted on fence posts just outside the capital city of Akamand. The freedom or happiness of his faction members was not a major concern to Maniac. His only priority was to transform the Dark Empire into the most powerful military state on the server. As Maniac worked to expand his faction's borders across the East Channel, another faction was doing the same. The Spartan mercenary states were a loose coalition of players located at the very center of the map. These mercenaries would fight for any cause if they were paid in enough gold. During the Dark Revolution, both sides of the conflict employed Spartan mercenaries to fight on their behalf. However, by the end of 2016, the player Nicholas52604 had unified all of the independent mercenary states under his leadership. The new chieftain wanted to be more than just the leader of a band of mercs. He wanted to be a conqueror, and in order to be a conqueror, he would need more land. After taking the scattered remains of the Random Trade Empire, Nicholas began construction on the capital city of Cybes. These actions would draw attention from the Dark Empire. Mine. Everything is mine. Sir, the Spartans have just conquered an island across the channel. Oh, have they? How dare they! Although Maniac had employed Spartans to fight the Raging Wizards in his revolution, he knew the Wizards had far more resources at their disposal and could easily buy the Spartans off if they wanted to. If Maniac ever hoped to destroy his former faction, the Spartans had to go. Stuck in the middle of this Cold War between the two great powers was the Arsenic Archipelago, a small island nation that shared a border with the Dark Empire. The Arsenians knew their faction would get absolutely clobbered by the Dark Empire if they ever decided to invade. This motivated the Arsenians to form a mutual defense pact with the Spartans against the Dark Empire. Tensions between the three countries flared up when the Dark Empire began to seemingly prepare for war. The slave mines and factories worked overtime, supplying an unprecedented amount of war material. By early 2017, every inch of the Dark Empire's coastline boasted cannons, fences, and stone walls. The Arsenians began to sound the alarms, and the Spartans responded by quickly building bunkers, raising their ocean walls, and even reconstructing the entire city of Cybes with stone, which, at the time, seemed a little pointless. But trust me, it'll come in handy later. Of course, the question has to be asked, where were the Raging Wizards in all of this? Didn't they know their ex-member was trying to start a war with their kinda sorta good buddies, the Spartans? Well, they were aware, but let's just say they were a bit distracted by taking in those sweet overseas resources. See, after the Dark Revolution, Skipper and his allies had come to the conclusion that the only way to deter enemies abroad was to do one thing: expand. Over the past few months, the Wizards had invaded and conquered large swaths of land across the world, creating the largest empire on the server, and they were getting super rich off the back of it. And while the rising tensions in Meropia were slightly concerning, the distant raging Wizards had no reason to believe they would be dragged into any potential Eastern conflict. The good times would roll on. For now. It's now May 2017. Both sides are ready to fight. Cannons are locked and loaded, defenses have been built up, and factories have produced quite the arsenal. Now, all we need is a little spark, and Nicholas had used a brand new invention, the flying machine, to slowly work his way over the Dark Empire's capital of Achaemon. From this position, he began to bomb the city. This took the Dark Imperials completely by surprise. They had expected a sea invasion, but the slow advance of redstone technology had seemingly caught them completely off guard. They responded quickly, firing salvo after salvo at the mercenaries' base. While this attack burned away much of the forest surrounding Sibis, it didn't destroy any vital infrastructure, as the whole city had been rebuilt with stone before the war. See, I told you that wasn't pointless. Despite being on the back foot, the Dark Empire was about to hit a huge stroke of luck. Once Nicholas's air forces ran out of ammunition, they were forced to move away from the capital in order to bail out of the flying machines. This temporary reprieve gave Maniac's forces the time they needed to study the Spartans' simple design and launch an airstrike of their own. The subsequent bombing of Sibis was far more devastating than the damage done to Achaemon. Nearly every building in the city was flattened. After destroying the Spartans' main base of operations across the sea, the Dark Imperials turned their attention to the Arsenic Archipelago. As her country fell, the Arsenian leader, Pretty Scarab 684, fled to the Spartan mainland. Across the ocean, it seemed to the raging Wizards that the perpetrator of the Dark Revolution may just win the war. The development of the flying machine also put things into a very different perspective for the Wizards. While most were confident that invasion was unlikely, the possibility that Maniac Master now possessed contraptions capable of bypassing the Imperial Navy and leveling Imperial Center caused much alarm. There were also the overseas colonies to worry about. If Maniac's forces conquered the Spartans, they would be poised to strike at the raging Wizard breadbasket colony of New Cafford. Faced with these realities, the raging Wizard's policy of neutrality would be stretched considerably throughout the coming days. Supplies from the raging Wizards would begin to flood the Spartan mercenary states, allowing them to rebuild and recoup from their previous shellacking. The Dark Imperials, however, weren't going to wait for the Spartans to regroup. Several flying machines were sent to harass the Spartan home islands. While this didn't have a massive impact on Spartan morale, it did serve to hinder their momentum and demonstrated the range of their new flying machines. One problem with these flying machines, though, was that they could be extremely inaccurate when sent to attack long-distance targets. One such example of this flaw was when Maniac sent a squadron of flying machines to bomb the Helion Palace, which, after the bombing of Sibis, was now the most important structure in the Spartan mercenary states. Simply put, the bombers failed the task successfully. Instead of bombing the palace, the squadron ended up bombing Skipper's Imperial Mansion. Fortunately, he wasn't there when it happened. Unfortunately, this royally ticked off the raging Wizards, and they immediately declared war on the Dark Empire. This was really bad news for Maniac, who now had to deal with hostile powers from both his southern and western flanks. Worse yet, the raging Wizards put their entire economic might behind the war effort. Before the Supreme Leader could launch an offensive against the Wizards, they bombed his industrial heartland, destroying vital mob farms and mine shafts. These losses were also made worse by renewed Spartan airstrikes on Achaemon, which destroyed key storehouses of his dwindling war supplies. Without proper resources, Maniac Master could no longer outfit his soldiers properly. Instead, Dark Empire soldiers would just have to rely on their own spare equipment and forage for supplies if they ran out. Sensing weakness in the enemy, the Alliance mercilessly carved through Maniac's forces. Within just a matter of days, Akamon would be all that was left of the Dark Empire, and even that would soon be taken by the Alliance. After an invasion by sea, air, and land, the Great Towers of Akamon would fall, and the Great Server War would finally be over. Following his defeat, Maniac Master fled the server, while many of his followers would disperse across the infinite continents of the Throne World, never to be seen again. A few remained in the land, however, but any attempts to reconstitute the Dark Empire would be strangled by internal strife, leaving the land barren and empty for many years to come. After being liberated, the Arsenic Archipelago would continue to exist for many years, and would even try to take some of the Dark Empire's former territories. But like many others, it would fail in these efforts. After the war, the Spartans would retreat back into the safety of their home islands while continuing to work as swords for hire. Nicholas would abandon any ideas of further conquest, and his dreams of a great Spartan empire would die along with the city of Cybes, the ruins of which still stand today. Although the Raging Wizards fared far better than most of the other factions involved, the attempts to repair the extensive war damages done to the continent would begin to take a toll on their finances. As small groups of raiders and gangs became prevalent across the world, the Wizards had to focus on protecting their large empire. The remnants of the Dark Empire and the smaller nations it had crushed would have to clean themselves up. The Great Server War destroyed the aspirations of many players across the Throne World server. Entire continents were gutted, economies were destroyed, and while the major powers suffered the most, no one escaped the conflict unscathed. As the remaining countries retreated behind their borders, a massive power vacuum had been left in Akamon, and in just a few short years, that vacuum would be filled by the largest empire the Throne World had ever seen. An empire that would threaten the very stability of the server and initiate the largest war in Minecraft history. Until next time.